Hi there again, it's Rich with another one of my videos. This one's on my family car, my day-to-day Mercedes C-Class estate, the C350e plug-in hybrid. This is a car that runs both a 2-litre turbocharged engine, producing over 200 brake horsepower. I think it's about 208, plus a battery pack that is good for 80 brake horsepower. So combined together, something like 290 brake horsepower in this rear-wheel drive Mercedes estate. I've owned this car since new. It's 2018, so it's about 2.5 years old, and I've covered just over 60,000 miles in the car, and so I've got a really good understanding of what this car is like to live with on a day-to-day basis. There's a couple of interesting features on the front of the car. One of these is these low down, what appear from a distance to be front brake vents, but actually are just plastic covers that don't form any sort of basis at all. And then the other thing that really annoys me with this car, though I like the front of it incredibly, I think it's a really smart looking front, is this bit here where and it's probably difficult to see, but there's an absolute huge gap here where, I mean, that's my middle finger, goes straight up, and in between the gap, it's a bizarre how Mercedes have built the bonnet to fit on that front grille. Exactly the same both sides. There's nothing wrong with the bonnet here. It's just quite strange how they've done it. So you can shove so many fingers in there. It's a really, really strange and odd design. But otherwise, it's a very nice front. If you look at the tyres, this runs 17-inch alloys. This car came with Hankocks tyres, but I've run them on Michelin for the rest of the 2.5 years. The Michelin Primacy have proved to be really, really good. However, I did swap the rears last time to Michelin Cross Climate, and I've been less impressed with these. They've certainly got much less grip. They are a better, I think, all-round summer and winter tyre, and I've got a pretty cool tyre pattern on the back, but certainly I've noticed a lack of traction from the rear since I fitted these, and we're in the UK summer at the moment, so certainly summer dry weather, much less grip on these cross climates than the Michelin Primacy. At the back of the car, that's the normal fuel flap, and then if you step round, that's clearly your charging point, and it just becomes a normal activity when you park the car at home to plug the car immediately into an external 3-pin plug. And then there's a remote access to the boot, or there's a button that you can just press, and electric opening boot. You notice here in the 350 compared to a normal C-Class is this lip. So normally in a C-Class, this here, the silver plate here, there's a drop down into a recessed boot. Well, with the plug-in hybrid, it's not. It steps up by about 2 inches, and that's because under the boot here is the batteries, and that's where all the batteries are put. They're over the rear of the car. About 200 kilograms of weight is added to the back of the C-Class because of that battery pack. That does affect rear tyre wear. It's actually very poor. I don't drive this car particularly fast, considering it's a nigh on 300 horsepower estate. We drive it more conservatively because we try to get the maximum battery use, and the rear tyres are only lasting barely 10,000 miles, and that's really down to all that weight over the rear wheels. The other feature in the back of the car is in here. If you open this and drop that, you've got various things in here. The normal Mercedes medical kit, a cargo net that's never been opened, your lock and wheel nuts, a triangle in there, and the tow eye, and then under these, which is very hard to find, there is your compressor, and if you haven't got an electrical supply, gas canister to do punctures and check tyre pressures. So that's worth knowing, because actually once that is back in place, you really would find it difficult to find that compressor. So to plug the car in, you simply just press on the corner, the flap opens, you've got a little flicky switch here, flick it across sideways, it opens. You then take your connector, which is just plugged into an external 3-pin connector, shove it in it goes, and you'll see that unlock turn to amber, and then when it goes to green, that means it's charging. And it's as simple as that. To take it out, you unlock the car. The car's now unlocked. It says it's unlocked. You just pull it straight out, get your flap, close the flap, get the bigger flap, and that is as simple as that. If I go into the back of the car, I'm just over 6 foot. That is my driving position there. That's the amount of space you've got. Let me just sit in. So this is me now, sat in the back of the car. The driver's seat is in the my driving position, and I'm a 6 foot 15 stone guy. I'm sat pretty comfortable. I've got enough leg room, not excessive, but I've got enough for certainly good distance. Headroom is fine as well. So actually, you could quite comfortably seat 4 people in this car. Just take a look under the bonnet. There's a catch there, and that's the 2-litre turbocharged hybrid engine. There's not a lot to say actually here. This is looking a bit worse for wear. It says it's covered over 60,000 miles in the last 2.5 years, so it's a everyday use type of car. The one thing I have found on this car is if you do reach out to the back, and you can see those exceedingly thick what appear to be orange cables, and you just assume that those have got some sort of really high voltage and power in, and you just don't want to go anywhere near those. The oil stick is there, and then the battery is actually covered under here. Is the battery, and if you need access, there's a red flap so you can get through to your positive terminal should you need to. You'll notice when you first start the car, in the top right corner of the display, you'll see the word ready, and under that will be hybrid, and that's the default setting for the car. But you can cycle through 4 different settings this car has. So you can have hybrid, which is, say, the default. You can have E mode, which in this case is actually blanked out because I've got no battery left in the car, which is electric mode only. You can go into E save, which is you want to put the engine on, and that will therefore start the engine, and it will make sure that the batteries are saved for when you need them later. And then you can cycle through to the bottom one, which is charge, and this is where the engine will start, and it will actually work hard to charge the battery. Okay, and that actually is why the engine's just started here, because I've got it into charge, and the battery's now, the engine's now running, charging the batteries. So that's how you cycle through the 4 different modes, and you do it through this button down here on the dash. Just keep pressing that, we'll cycle through the 4. The other interesting button here is this one, which is called dynamic, and what this does, on the mid display you'll see different settings, and currently the car is in the eco setting, but you can change that to, so that's on the eco setting, which is the softest of the 4 settings. You can then increase that and put that into comfort. You can then switch that into sport, which automatically means the engine will start. And then if you fancy going for a harder drive, you can put it into Sport Plus, and by cycling to that, that means the engine and the batteries and the suspension and the gear change and everything goes up to 10 out of 10. We generally find going through these that actually we either sit it in Eco because we want to go as far as we can on battery, or we put it into Sport Plus because we fancy going for a harder drive. And then if you scan down to, these are one of the annoying features, and it's this sequence of buttons along and below the cabin vents. If you get a little bit closer, you can see that when you're reaching along to change one of the settings, by either pushing up or pushing down, if you're driving, they're very difficult. You've got to look and be very precise, because you can't do it by feel, because they all feel the same, they're all touching each other, and they're actually quite annoying feature. And then the second other disappointing feature is, and it's probably hard to see in here, but it's this actual plastic, and I don't know if you can see, but it just, you can clean this, and within, well, once you've cleaned it, minutes later it just collects dust so quickly, and it also marks really badly. So there is a few choices. Keep away from this black because it's really difficult to keep clean and it scratches quite easily, but everything else is really quite intuitive. They've got the single button that controls your iPad in the top of the screen. It's relatively intuitive, it's easy to follow. You've got your main buttons here, and here in this, if you press that, in here you've got a storage compartment for lots of stuff. You've got the 12 volt power supply and 2 drinks containers. And if you go back into the centre armrest with a button there, you've got this very large, with a couple of USBs in there, stuff to put all your family stuff in that people need. Right, I think we need to take this for a drive, and let's see how it goes. Let's take it for a quick drive, and I'll tell you more about the car whilst we're driving. So the C350e, this car is, it's 2 cars in one. It's the environmentally friendly, battery only, electric car for local journeys, and then it's a rapid, fast Q car with 298 brake horsepower, rear wheel drive estate that will keep up with most performance cars. Certainly off the line it will lead most performance cars because of that instant battery power. So you generally drive it in 2 ways. The settings that I showed you about either being on Eco, Comfort, Sport or Sport Plus, we drive probably 95% of our journeys on Eco. We probably drive the other 5% on Sport Plus, and we rarely drive on Comfort or Sport, because those middle settings, you're not really one or the other. So first of all, let's look at the E side, the EV side of the car, because I think that's the one that will attract a lot of people to this plug-in hybrid. It's officially 90 miles range. That value is very much dependent on 3 things. One is where you live. If there's lots of hills, electric vehicles don't like steep hills and inclines because they eat battery life. 2, how you drive it. If you're aggressive with your acceleration, that will eat into your battery quickly. And the third one is temperature. If it's 25 degrees outside, you're going to get much more than if it's 5 degrees outside. So saying what the range is pretty tough. But I'll tell you, in 2.5 years, my record is 17 miles. My most likely, what I normally get is about 10. And it can be less, it can be only 7 or 8 if it's really cold, you've got everything powered on, the temperature is below 0, you're not going to get many miles on electric only. In the summer, if everything's with you on a flat road, you're driving carefully, it's 25 degrees outside, you might get into the mid-teens. And as I said, my record is 17. There's a few really, really clever features though when you're driving in economy. And one is, if you're travelling up to a car and the car senses you are gaining too quickly, it will do a double tap on the accelerator. And what that double tap says to you is, take your foot off the accelerator, because actually the car's telling you you can coast up behind that car and it stops you driving up to the back of it and then having to brake. And you think, oh, I don't like the thought of the accelerator double tapping, but it's very subtle and it works very, very well. The second clever feature is if you're in E mode, so battery only, EV mode, then if you're accelerating and it senses that if you accelerate any harder, the engine's going to have to start, it will put a little bit of resistance in the accelerator. Not so you can't push through, but just enough that says, hold it on that and it will stay on EV mode, push through it and the engine's going to start. Two very subtle but very clever ways this car operates as an EV. And you may feel that 8, 10, 12 miles range is terrible, but you have to remember that once the battery has been used, it defaults into hybrid, and the hybrid car with the engine works along with the battery, and although the battery may be depleted, it will regenerate. So when you lift off, when you're braking, when you're going downhill, when you're slowing down, the car, you'll find that it self-brakes because it is regenerating the batteries. And that regenerating works very, very well. So actually, in normal hybrid driving, you'll still be on battery probably 20-25% of the time. The big question then comes, what's your miles per gallon? And that's an interesting and very much personal view. For people that spend the majority of the times doing short journeys where you can charge regularly, then you're going to see really, really high MPG. For people that spend the majority of the time on the motorway, the engine's going to be running nearly all the time. And on the motorway, unless you're braking or lifting off the accelerator, the engine is running. So you get a real big, broad brush view of MPG depending on your driving style and depending on the way you use the car. Longer the journey, less MPG. Shorter journeys, higher MPG. To give you a comparison, at over 60,000 miles in 2.5 years, I've done everything from lots of short journeys to lots of long motorway journeys and everything in between. I would call myself as an average type of person with regard to this car. And in the 60,000 miles, this car's averaging about 50 miles per gallon. And that constitutes about 55% of the time with the engine running and about 45% of the time with battery only. So that's what it's balanced out at over mixed driving. And then there's the other side of the car. This is where the engine's running, you've put it into Sport Plus, the suspension's firmed up, the gear changes are more rapid, the batteries are up and running, and you've got nearly 290 brake horsepower in a rear-wheel drive Mercedes. And suddenly this car surprises a lot of people, and it's especially quick from stationary, and that's because the 80 horsepower battery pack gets you off that line instantly. There is no fraction of a second for the engine to start, to kick in, to build the revs. Instantaneously those batteries get the car moving in the same way that a Tesla happens. And once the batteries have got you moving up to sort of 10, 20, 30 miles an hour, the 2 litre turbo engine's kicked in and suddenly unleashes all 290 horsepower. So acceleration in this car is actually really, really quick. The Sport Plus suspension firms things up nicely, it rapidly changes gears, and it is actually a really quick Q car. So what do I think of the car? Well, it's been an absolute treat to drive for the last 2.5 years. It's been completely pain-free. You have 2 cars for the price of 1. You have an electric vehicle that'll do 10-mile-ish range, which for lots of journeys is more than enough. No fuel, no emissions, good for the environment, and the game that my wife and I play isn't how fast you can go now, but how far can you go before the engine cuts in. And that's the key, because you haven't got the worry of finding an electric charging point, because you've still got a 2 litre turbo engine out front. And the second part of the car is the performance. You have a powerful 2 litre turbo engine. You have a powerful rear-wheel drive car. It's probably not as engaging as the BMW, but the Mercedes comes as an estate. The BMW 330e is only a saloon. So you have the versatility of the estate. What are the bad points of the car? Probably only 2 points I can find after 2.5 years. One, it's these panel of switches that I've talked about. They're too close together with the black plastic surround that just attracts dust. And the second one, for its appetite to eat tyres, rear tyres in particular. And we know why, because that's because the battery's being over those rear wheels. But the good points are, it saves money, it's good for the environment, and actually the range, although appears to be low, once it goes as a normal hybrid, it's perfectly a great car. 2, it's a really comfortable car to do big distances in. And 3, it's fast. It's nearly 300 brake horsepower. It's rear wheel drive. It's a versatile estate. It's a Mercedes-Benz. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I've done lots more of the videos. If you have, check the other videos out. Keep watching, keep subscribing, give me the thumbs up, drop me a comment, and I'll be coming up with a new video very, very soon. Thanks for watching, everybody.